Eric Barcia. Let's kick things off in the summer of 1997 in Fairfax County, Virginia. Meet Eric Barcia, a 22-year-old fast food worker with a thirst for adventure. Eric had a dream. He wanted to go bungee jumping. But professional bungee jumping is expensive. It requires equipment and training and all that boring safety stuff. Eric figured he could do it better and cheaper. So he decided to create his own DIY bungee experience. His equipment? A collection of standard luggage straps and bungee cords, the kind you use to tie stuff to the roof of your car. His master plan for connecting them? Tape. Lots and lots of tape. He meticulously bound the cords and their metal hooks together, wrapping them in duct tape and electrical tape to make them safe. One night, Eric took his invention to a 70-foot-high railroad trestle in a local park. He anchored one end of his homemade cord to the bridge, tied the other end around his ankle, and took a leap of faith. Here's the thing about bungee jumping that Eric Barcia apparently missed in his research: elasticity. The cords stretched just like they were supposed to. Unfortunately, they stretched a little too well. The total length of the fully extended cord was, and I quote the police report here, greater than the distance between the trestle and the ground. Eric slammed into the hardened path below the bridge and died instantly. A hiker found his body around 2 a.m., a tragic bundle on the asphalt with a tangle of bungee cords leading from his leg all the way back up to the bridge. He had successfully measured the height of the bridge. He had successfully built a cord shorter than the bridge. He just forgot about the stretching part. A fatal and profoundly dumb miscalculation. Camargo. Okay, this next one is a tale of karma. Instant, brutal, and darkly hilarious karma. We're in Buenos Aires, Argentina, in February of 1998. A 25-year-old man, let's call him Camargo, was having a furious argument with his 20-year-old wife in their 8th-floor apartment. Neighbors heard shouting, things breaking, a classic domestic dispute. But then, Camargo took it to a whole new horrifying level. In a fit of rage, he grabbed his wife, dragged her to the balcony, and threw her over the railing. An act of pure, murderous violence. She plummeted towards the street below. But then, something incredible happened. She didn't hit the ground. Instead, she became entangled in a web of electrical power lines running alongside the building. She was left dangling, shocked and injured, but alive. Now, Camargo, seeing his wife still alive, had a choice. He could call for help, he could feel remorse, or he could double down. He chose to double down. He immediately jumped from the balcony himself. Why? We'll never know for sure. Maybe he was trying to finish the job, to knock her loose. Maybe it was a sudden, guilt-ridden attempt to save her. Whatever his motive, his execution was lacking. He completely missed the wires. And his wife.
Look.
He sailed past her and fell 8 stories to the concrete below, where he died on impact. His wife, meanwhile, was rescued by neighbors who helped her swing to a nearby balcony. She was taken to the hospital and she recovered. Let's just recap. He tried to murder his wife by throwing her off a balcony. She was saved by a freak accident. He then tried to do something else by jumping after her, and in the process killed himself while she survived. It's a perfect 180-degree reversal of fortune. A story so perfectly ironic it won a Darwin Award, and rightfully so. Kevin Mackle. We've all been there. You're in a dorm, it's late, you've had a few drinks, and you just want a damn soda. You put your money in the vending machine, press the button, and nothing.
Huh?
The machine just stares back at you, a silent, monolithic thief. For most of us, the story ends with a muttered curse and a walk back to our room. For 21-year-old Kevin Mackle, it ended with his death. In the early morning hours of December 12, 1998, Kevin, a first-year student at Bishop's University in Quebec, was celebrating the end of final exams. He'd been drinking with friends, his blood alcohol level was later found to be just over the legal driving limit, and around 4 a.m. he decided to grab a Coke before catching an early train home for the Christmas holidays. He went to the dorm's vending machine, put his money in, and got nothing. So, Kevin did what countless students in that residence had done before. He started rocking the machine. It was a known campus life hack, a seemingly harmless way to get a stubborn or free can. Except this wasn't a small machine. It was a nearly 1,000-pound metal box. And what Kevin didn't know is that at a tilt of just 20 degrees, these top-heavy giants become dangerously unstable. Alone in the early morning quiet, fueled by a bit of booze and frustration, Kevin gave it one last heave. The machine's center of gravity shifted, and in a single brutal second, it tipped over and came crashing down on top of him, pinning his torso to the floor. The sheer weight crushed his ribcage, making it impossible to expand his lungs. He couldn't breathe. He couldn't scream. He was asphyxiated by a vending machine, all for a soda that, in a final act of cosmic irony, never even came out. He was found dead later that morning. His parents filed a major lawsuit against Coca-Cola, the machine manufacturer, the vending operator, and the university itself. Their argument was simple. This was a known hazard. The machine model had a history of tipping, and a university employee even knew students regularly rocked it but did nothing. The case became an international headline. The bizarre moment and urban legend became a tragic reality. It sparked a wave of changes, with universities bolting down their machines and manufacturers adding prominent, explicit warning labels. Kevin Mackle's death, as dumb as it was, is the reason you now see those "tipping may cause injury or death" stickers, a cautionary tale about the fatal consequences of a moment of drunken frustration. The Dinosaur Man. Our next story takes us to Santa Coloma de Gramenet, a town near Barcelona, Spain, in May of 2021. The star of this tale is a 39-year-old man whose name was never publicly released, and a large, hollow, papier-mâché stegosaurus statue that once served as an advertisement for an old movie theater. One day, our protagonist was near the dinosaur when he had a very modern problem. He dropped his cell phone. And where did it fall? Right into a hole in the hollow leg of the stegosaurus. Now, a rational person might write the phone off as a loss, maybe poke a stick in there. But this man? He was a problem solver, a man of action. He decided the only logical course of action was to go in after it. He climbed up and squeezed himself head first into the opening in the dinosaur's leg. He managed to get in, but then he got stuck. Upside down, in a confined space, inside a dinosaur. He couldn't get out. He couldn't call for help because, well, his phone was still somewhere in the dinosaur's leg. A day or two went by. A father and his son were walking past the statue when they noticed a strange smell. They peered through a crack in the dinosaur's leg and saw a body. They immediately called the police. Firefighters had to be called in to literally saw open the leg of the stegosaurus to extract the man's decomposing body. The official cause of death was asphyxia, from being trapped in an inverted position for a prolonged period. He had died trying to retrieve his phone from inside a cheap, decorative dinosaur. The statue was unceremoniously removed after the incident. It's a uniquely modern tragedy, a death that simply could not have happened 30 years ago, and one that sounds more like a dark urban legend than a real event. But it's real. And it is profoundly, Jurassically dumb. Alejandro Cazares. Some people see a warning sign and think, I should probably stop. Others see a warning sign and think, challenge accepted. Alejandro Cazares was definitely in the second group. In the early morning hours of May 24, 2019, 23-year-old Alejandro and his friend, 32-year-old Roberto Alejandro Moreno, were driving through Louisiana. They approached the Black Bayou Bridge, a drawbridge that was, at that moment, open to let a boat pass. The warning lights were flashing. The barrier arms were down. The bridge was very clearly and very obviously closed. But for Alejandro and Roberto, this wasn't an obstacle. It was an opportunity. According to a witness, they stopped the car. Roberto got out, manually lifted the barrier arms so the car could pass under it, and then got back in. They then drove up to the edge of the gap in the bridge. But they didn't just try to cross. Oh no. Alejandro stopped, put the car in reverse, backed up to get a running start, and then floored it. He was going to jump the drawbridge, like in a movie. Their 2016 Chevy Cruze was not a stunt car. It launched into the air, cleared about a foot of the gap, and then plunged directly into the canal below, sinking to the bottom. When emergency services arrived, they found the car fully submerged. Alejandro Cazares was still trapped inside. Roberto Moreno was found in the water nearby. Both were pronounced dead at the scene from drowning. They had every possible warning. Lights, barriers, a giant gaping hole where the road should be. And they still chose to ignore it all in favor of a Dukes of Hazzard fantasy. The Booby-Trap Hoarder. And finally, we have a cautionary tale about paranoia. Meet a man known only as George, an elderly American hoarder living alone in the early 2000s. George was terrified of burglars. His solution wasn't a security alarm or a big dog. No, George decided to turn his entire house into a giant, lethal mousetrap, inspired by a very dark version of Home Alone. His house was already a maze of junk, with narrow paths winding through towering piles of hoarded possessions. But George added another layer of danger. He rigged the entire place with elaborate booby traps, tripwires that would trigger falling objects, boards with nails sticking up, hidden under piles of newspaper, concealed pits and hazards buried within the clutter. He had created a fortress. The only problem is, when you live in a fortress, you still have to navigate it yourself.
Huh?
One day, George forgot where one of his traps was. He triggered one of his own devices. He was injured in the fall and became trapped among the mountains of his own junk, unable to move, unable to call for help. When neighbors eventually called for a welfare check, emergency responders were met with a nightmare. They couldn't just rush in. The house was so dangerously cluttered and rigged with traps that it took them hours to safely clear a path to reach him. Every step was a risk. By the time they finally got to him, it was far too late. George was dead. He had been killed by his own paranoia. The very system he designed to protect himself became his tomb. He died alone, a victim of his own elaborate and ultimately very dumb security system. It's a grim, claustrophobic end, and a powerful warning about what can happen when your fear of the outside world turns your own home into the most dangerous place of all.